Magnus Carlsen is an extraordinarily well-respected and admired chess player. Carlsen has ruled the chess world for over a decade, thanks to his extraordinary talent and tactical genius. But even the most talented athletes can fall victim to life's caprices occasionally. Magnus Carlsen's drunken match with an elite chess player will become one of the most famous moments in history. In this video, we will look at when drunk Magnus Carlsen played against a pro player. The opening of the playing field. Magnus's opponent, Damian opened the match with e4, and Magnus, under the effects of alcohol, answered with c5, the Sicilian defense. The audience began to applaud Damian as he moved his piece to a3, but they needed to figure out what Magnus had in preparation for the poor fellow. Magnus moved his pawn to g6, and after some time in advancement, Damian brought his bishop back onto a2. Magnus took a more cautious tack, developing his knight, while Damian played a4, an attack so brilliant that even Magnus couldn't help but admire it. After stopping White's a4 pawn and exchanging a few pawns, Damian grows his knight in preparation for a castle, and Magnus reacts foolishly by playing a3, handing the advantage to Damian. After Damian's castle, both parties moved their pieces to advantageous positions. The drowsy Magnus attempted to castle queenside, but could not correctly grip each piece. Magnus would make some mistakes while inebriated and under pressure, and Damian was aware of this. Magnus moved his knight back to d1, redirected his knight to safer squares, and then targeted Damian's bishop, kidding around with him until Damian played his bishop back to d2 to avoid the assault. However, Magnus quickly retaliated by moving his pawn to f5 and then taking another swig of beer, pleased with where he was. After that, what happened? When Damian put his bishop to h4, he pinned Magnus's knight to his rook. However, Magnus quickly pushed his rook to the center of the board, rendering Damian's bishop essentially worthless. Damian evened the score by attacking Magnus's queen and knight, prompting a trade and enabling Magnus to advance his pawn farther, forming a stunning pawn chain. Then Magnus ramps up the tension, putting plenty of his pieces dangerously near Damian's king, but leaving him just enough time to save the game. Magnus lost his bishop to Damian, but won it back with his rook. After that, Damian sought to stir up some movement in the middle by moving a piece to d4 to exchange pawns, and then using his queen to assault both Magnus' rooks. Magnus, however, soon solved this problem through careful calculation and stole one of Damian's pawns. After exchanging more pawns, Damian targeted Magnus's queen, prompting the drunken raging of Magnus's mutterings before Magnus checked Damian with his own queen. The blunder by Magnus. Magnus giggled off Damian's rook blockade of his check and played his biggest misstep by moving his rook to d8. Once Damian moved his queen to c3, intending to seize Magnus's pawn with a check, Magnus's formerly substantial lad quickly faded. Magnus's error here was compounded when he took Damian's knight and then, after Damian verified, enabled him to take it back with his rook. Even before Magnus had everything aligned to attack Damian's king, he was making progress. Magnus and Damian were in a similar role in the queen trade. Sadly for Damian, this was the game's final stage, and Magnus Carlsen is universally hailed as the greatest gamer ever. Magnus attacked Damian's rook, but Damian defended, and then Magnus played f3, which, after Damian's bishop moved d5, secured the victory for Damian. Since it poses the prospect of a terrifying check on Magnus' king, which is exceedingly perilous for Magnus, Damian uncovers this, which leads Magnus to yet another fatal error in judgment. By advancing his king-king to position b8, Damian had a decisive advantage, and if he had kept playing at this level, would have defeated the world king. Drunken Magnus comes out on top. Magnus's ultimate god mind found an action that attacked Damian's king after he checked his king-king and took a free pawn. Thus, Damian had to answer appropriately by moving his rook to h7 and daring to take another pawn. When Damian answered with g3, Magnus understood precisely what he needed to do, for it was in just these situations that his competitors began to unravel. But Magnus reacted quickly, raising his rook out of harm's way. After Damian advanced his second rook, Magnus reviewed and captured a pawn. There was nowhere more for Damian to go. Therefore, his only option was to play his rook on square a8, thereby checking Magnus's king-king indefinitely. After a hard-fought match, both players embrace hands, An inebriated Magnus claims another decisive victory after checking and pushing Damian's king to retreat before elevating his pawn to a fresh new queen. That's all for this video. Leave your thoughts on this moment. Also, take a minute out and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned. See you soon.